The Hungarian Grand Prix has never failed to entertain us, and with the weather forecast for this weekend spicing things up, could we see another banger of a race with the fight between both McLarens heating up week after week, although it looks like the rest have given up when you're expecting a rain-affected race. You can never say never. So what are some of the biggest storylines that we're going to see unfold in Hungary, and more importantly, who will come out on top? First things first, the weather. I think you already know how important of a factor of the rain is here, because we've seen how much chaos it caused in Spa. Unlike in Belgium, the weather forecast for a rainy weekend here is not that great in percentages, but it's the same in pattern for the entirety of the weekend. We're expecting dry conditions except on Sunday, when the chances of rain are increased a lot. Now what this means is that the teams will have the same dilemma they had in Spa. Should you compromise your downforce levels for the rain that comes on Sunday and think of the bigger picture? You'd arguably say yes, because the points are scored on Sunday, right? Well, let me remind you of something. The FIA didn't allow anyone to race in the rain in Spa. Yes, it was torrential at first, but when it started to dry, the race director decided to wait until it was more or less completely dry, which meant that around the first half of the race, the rain-set-up cars were just sitting ducks on the grid, and that's something you don't want to have to experience here in Hungary. Even though the downforce levels are naturally higher than the ones in Spa, still it's a compromise that the teams would have to make, and they would have to hope that the race director is not going to bring the same decisions he brought in Spa. Nevertheless, the teams are ready to hit the track, and although no major upgrades are expected, it's not necessarily going to be a snooze fest. The reconstruction of the entire main straight and the grandstands will make this weekend even more spectacular. The primary favorites are McLaren, and the battle is not even close. The fact that a couple of teams have already given up on their 2025 development goes to show that the walking base squad might already pop the champagne in the constructors at least. Be that as it may, we do have a lot to think about for the intra-team fight that's happening between Piastri and Norris, and one that had a very interesting twist at this same place. Last year, McLaren ruined the strategy for Piastri, but then begged Norris to let his teammate ahead, pledging that he is the teammate and he'll need him for the championship fight later on. Well, throw that out the window for this year, because these two are going neck and neck, just like the good old 2016 Mercedes days, with only the difference being that Lando tends to break under pressure when it matters the most. We've seen a couple of crucial mistakes in Spa while chasing Piastri, and now that the championship gap is 16 points, he cannot allow similar stuff to happen to him if he wants to keep his step on his teammate. Zak Brown is the one who spoke about the championship fight that's currently going on between two drivers, and although this is the perfect scenario for every team out there to have, it's still a headache that needs to be managed properly. Elaborating further on this ahead of the Hungarian Grand Prix, Brown said both of our drivers have the momentum because they're winning a lot and getting 1-2s. I think Oscar was a little disappointed with qualifying in Belgium. Lando was very happy. I'm sure he's a bit bummed he didn't win, but it's coming off 2 wins in a row. I think it's going to be a coin cost every weekend. Oscar is a machine, and what's impressive is how aggressive he is, and yet he always brings the car home. Norris will enter this weekend on bigger momentum, though, as he's been on the podium 3 times out of the last 4 races, and while this is the main story that we're going to see develop in Hungary, let's not forget about the fact that often separates these two, just like in the days when he used to separate Bottas and Hamilton. Max Verstappen, the Dutchman, is adamant that he's out of the championship fight despite all of the positive words coming from Helmut Marko. But that doesn't mean he won't drive every single percentage of the car that's being given to him week in and week out. That is not something that Zak Brown believes in, and although he knows that his team is the clear favorite headed into every racing weekend for the remainder of the season, he understands how important the Verstappen factor is. Yes, the lead is now well over 80 points from Piastri, and from this point I don't think you can put the Dutchman in the category of a championship contender unless something crazy happens, but at the end of the day he can be an external factor that will steal away points from either Norris or Piastri by separating them on the grid. Elaborating further on this, Brown said, I think it's too early to rule out Verstappen from the title race. It's looking good, but Max, there's a lot of racing left to do. We've got a nice gap, but I wouldn't say we're there. We've all been around this sport too long to start dancing before you're in the end zone is a very dangerous thing to do, but the limitations are there and you can't hide it, which means that Red Bull are now highly likely to focus on 2026 and just let Verstappen accept the fact that he'll have to return to the number 33 from the next year onwards. The good news is that he will stay with the team, so we're headed to this race knowing that he and Russell are likely to remain in their own environments and therefore won't cause any avalanche with some crazy decisions which might not be suitable for many of the fans. Be that as it may, Verstappen believes that Red Bull should continue to develop the car in 2025 and potentially bring more upgrades because, if you look at the bigger picture, a big part of these cars is going to be translated onto the next ones, maybe not physically but in terms of learning about the aerodynamic behavior and how it gels with the car. It will definitely be applicable to the new models in 2026. Elaborating further on this, Verstappen's gone on to say, no, I think it's still important to develop the 2025 car because you'll learn certain things and they always will have an effect on next year. The cars will be completely different, but there are still things we can work on and take to next year. So, of course, engineering and car design and next year, but we can still learn a lot about this year. But then again, we come to probably the biggest disappointment in 2025, Ferrari. The Maranello-based squad raised expectations so high only for them to end up as massive failures in terms of setting the car up to where it needs to be. The only thing left for them to fight for is the P2 spot in the Constructors' Championship, which is highly unlikely to be contested by Red Bull. Mercedes only, however, changes won't be made to the leadership, and the only thing that's worth noting here is that reports coming from Maranello state that the team has already given up on the 2025 development. It might be for a good thing because Hamilton has been calling for this to happen for a very long period of time, but yet again, Ferrari has proven that some serious internal changes need to be made if they're to be seen as competitors for the championship. That doesn't deny the fact that this is one of Hamilton's favorite tracks to be on in his career. He's been standing on the highest place of the podium 8 times and started the race from pole position 9 times. There have only been 2 occasions in which he hasn't led a lap in this race. 2010, when he retired due to mechanical failure, and 2015, when after starting from pole position, he lost a lot of positions and wasn't able to recover, which technically doesn't count as not leading a lap. But with how Ferrari's position now, I don't think you should expect a lot from them this weekend. Potentially a podium if something goes wrong with Verstappen and Red Bull, and who knows if the McLaren's ahead to tackle horns, maybe they could make a great usage of that as well. Mercedes are also suited to deliver some great performance here because of the weather conditions on Sunday, and when the temperatures are a bit cooler on the tarmac, the W16 suddenly comes alive. However, even though they're going to continue developing the car throughout this campaign, beliefs that they will be doing something extraordinarily well are thrown out of the window. Their hope is for 2026 and the new regulations, and I don't blame them. You have an amazing engine program and 2 extremely good young drivers who are ready to bring the championship home for the first time since 2020 in the drivers and 2021 in the Constructors' Championship. With all of this in mind, which storyline are you most excited about ahead of the Hungarian Grand Prix? And more importantly, who do you think will prevail between Norris and Piastri in the fight for P1? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.